I recently got back from walking the Camino de Santiago. Maybe you saw my packing list, or maybe you saw my actual walk on the Camino. Well, in this video, I wanted to share 5 things that I loved about the Camino de Santiago. Hello everyone, my name is Matt Zeffi and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I post a bunch of camping and primarily overlanding videos as well, but right now I'm also doing a lot of traveling just internationally, so that's where the Camino came in. So if any of that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing and turning those notifications on so that you're notified whenever I post. But let's jump right into it. Number 1, and this has to be something that I was thinking about throughout the entire Camino that I really loved, was actually how little thinking was required when it comes to the itinerary. I travel quite a bit, particularly for work and also personally as well. And it can be kind of exhausting always having to put together these elaborate itineraries. But for the Camino de Santiago, whichever route you pick, it is pretty much laid out for you. Now, I did stray and get off the stages here and there to explore a bit, whether it be in the towns or whatnot. But for the most part, you have an itinerary laid out for you. You wake up, you kind of have breakfast along the trail, you're just walking most of the day, and then you have dinner and go to bed. And you meet some really cool people along the way, of course, see some beautiful sights, explore the culture, explore a whole bunch of different things. But for the most part, the itinerary is laid out for you. Number 2, you can do this trip alone or with other people. I will be honest, it will be completely different experiences whether you do it alone or with other people, and it also very much varies depending on the time of year that you're going. I chose to do it alone, and for the most part, there was not a lot of people on trail, and a lot of people love that aspect, but as it comes more towards the summer, then you're going to have more people on trail, and it just depends on whether you want that or not. If you're a very social person, maybe you actually want more of the season when there's going to be a lot of people on the trail. I did it alone, and also I was waking up extremely early every day, so I was often alone on the trail. But I did meet some people along the way, but I definitely would have met more people had I gone at a more popular time. But like I said, you can also go with other people. I certainly saw a lot of that, whether you're going with friends or family. I was actually going to go with some friends at first, maybe even some family, but ultimately the schedules just didn't align. I sort of had some time off and I thought it was perfect to go then. And honestly, I was kind of like, when else am I going to do that? That's pretty much the reason why I end up doing quite a few solo trips, is because to align schedules as an adult tends to be pretty difficult. And although I often prefer trips with people, trips alone are also incredibly peaceful and you get a whole different experience out of it. Also, on the Camino de Santiago, I pretty much filmed everything, so I don't know who else would want to put in an extra 15 kilometers a day, maybe even more some days, just to kind of walk back and forth filming things and also have to deal with me spending an hour at each given location to photograph it and film it. But all to say, I love that you can do it alone or with other people, and should I do the Camino de Santiago again, I would likely go with other people, just to get a different experience out of it, Number 3, and this one is pretty subjective, but coming from doing a lot of travel within the United States, I found the Camino de Santiago to be pretty affordable. And let me know in the comments if you would be interested in me releasing a full pricing breakdown on how much I spent on the Camino. But all that to say, I definitely spent significantly less than some of the trips that I've done around the US. Everyone kind of knows that it tends to be a little bit more expensive. We don't really have the hostel or albergue culture that there is on the Camino, and that definitely made things cheaper. And I didn't really do albergues the entire time. I did it for a few nights and switched back and forth between private rooms and sometimes even in hotels. But even some of the hotels there that I did spend money on in the private rooms were still extremely cheap for what I was getting, again, in comparison to what I would normally spend here. In fact, even some campsites around here in the state of New York, where I am right now, tend to be more expensive than some of the hotels that I stayed at on the Camino. When it comes to food, doing the menu del dia and the Peregrino menu, of course, you're going to not spend that much money. You can save more money by actually cooking yourself. I definitely saw that in some of the albergues. It's actually funny because I ate at restaurants the entire time. I think that's pretty normal on the Camino de Santiago. When I'm home here in the US, I'm almost always cooking, so that was a different experience for me as a whole. And overall, I still found it very affordable. In fact, I think it might be more expensive day to day here in New York State than my entire trip being away in Camino de Santiago. Number 4, and this one again is going to kind of depend on maybe what season you go, what time of the day you're walking, but it certainly didn't feel very touristy. It felt very authentic. You're going to the restaurants and you're speaking more Spanish than I even thought. I picked up quite a bit while I was there. I actually understood more than I was expecting. There were times when I was just having conversations with people who only spoke Spanish and I mostly spoke English, and you know what, we still had a good conversation. It might have been sort of like a charades, but you know, it went well overall. But for the most part, it doesn't feel very touristy, and I understand that I am technically a tourist, but we don't have to talk about that. Number 5, and this is the biggest one, get ready because you might be surprised. The 5th thing that I loved probably the most about the Camino de Santiago was the walking. In my day-to-day, I don't get to do nearly as much. I don't think that anyone really gets to do that much walking in their day-to-day. I was averaging around 30 kilometers per day, with my biggest day being around 38 kilometers. Again, mainly because I was filming, but I just loved walking so much. And I feel like the fact that you're out there traveling by foot from place to place for hours each day. I didn't even put my headphones on one time. I was just listening to the sounds of nature. And you're waking up at sunrise and you get going, and then you are met with this beautiful thick fog each morning and this crisp air. And don't get me wrong, I love traveling by car here in the United States, especially road tripping around, but there was something about traveling by foot that really stuck with me. Those are my 5 things that I loved about walking the Camino de Santiago. But let me know in the comments below if you want to see 5 more. Maybe you want to see 5 things that I didn't like so much. I definitely have more planned, so let me know in the comments and I will drop it. Once again, if you're new here, definitely consider subscribing, hit that notification bell, and hit the like button if you got anything out of it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you out there on the road.